At this body mass, repeated trauma should rewrite behavior faster than memory can keep up. Pain is supposed to teach avoidance, hesitation, retreat. Instead, the feedback loop never closes. The signal arrives, the damage is logged, and nothing meaningful changes. That contradiction exists in a small African mammal with a low center of gravity and an unusually calm heart rate under stress, the honey badger. What feels wrong is not its aggression, but its indifference to the cost of that aggression. Nervous systems are not built for bravery, they are built for conservation. Pain receptors fire to preserve tissue, fear circuits activate to preserve the organism, learning consolidates to prevent repetition. In this animal, those layers remain intact, but their hierarchy is inverted. Injury does not become a deterrent, it becomes background noise. Observations show continued approach behaviors after bites, stings, strikes, events that in similarly sized mammals produce immediate withdrawal and long-term avoidance. This is not a failure to feel pain. Nociceptors are present and functional, but a failure to let pain negotiate terms. The unsettling part is how little margin exists between damage and death at this scale. A body this small hemorrhages faster, overheats faster, depletes oxygen faster. Every wound is proportionally larger, every mistake amplified, and yet the behavior persists, not once, but repeatedly, as if the organism is operating on a rule set that assumes survival even when probability disagrees. From a biological perspective, this should collapse into selection pressure. Individuals that overcommit should be removed from the gene pool, but they are not. The species persists, which means enough individuals survive these encounters to reproduce. That survival does not come from invulnerability, bones break, skin tears, infections occur. It comes from a nervous system that does not escalate fear at the rate expected. Stress hormones rise, but behavior remains confrontational. Heart rate increases, but does not spike into panic thresholds that degrade motor control. The result is a creature that continues to move forward, while running an internal deficit it cannot fully repay. This is where the discomfort settles in. Biology usually enforces humility through consequence. Here, consequence arrives late, inconsistently, sometimes not at all. The honey badger does not look fearless because it has mastered danger. It looks fearless because its internal alarms do not dominate its decisions. That creates a life strategy balanced on continual exposure to failure. There is no buffer, no graceful exit, no reliable lesson learned. Each encounter is a new role against physics and physiology. Most systems that operate like this burn out quickly. This one does not. And that leaves a question the body itself never asks: how long can a mammal survive when its own warning signals are treated as optional? Neurotoxic venom is designed to outrun recovery. It does not destroy tissue. It interrupts timing. Muscles stop responding. Breathing loses rhythm. The body becomes present but uncooperative. For most mammals of this size, that delay is fatal because metabolism cannot wait. Oxygen debt accumulates, neurons misfire, collapse follows quietly. And yet, with certain snake venoms, the honey badger enters this window and sometimes exits it. The paradox is not immunity. The venom still binds, still disrupts neuromuscular transmission, still causes temporary paralysis. The paradox is survival inside a biochemical countdown that should close before reversal is possible. Research indicates altered acetylcholine receptor structures in mustelids that reduce binding efficiency of some neurotoxins. Reduced is not removed. This is not a shield, it is friction. Venom action slows just enough for the body to remain above irreversible thresholds. What makes this unsettling is how narrow that margin is. Paralysis has been observed lasting minutes to hours, during which respiration is impaired and movement is absent. There is no active defense during that time, no escape behavior, no correction. The body simply waits, while chemistry argues with chemistry. Metabolic rate continues, oxygen demand continues, waste accumulates. In small mammals, that imbalance usually escalates quickly. The system should tip. Sometimes it does, sometimes it does not. Survival here is not robust, it is conditional. A slightly higher venom dose, a slightly longer hypoxic interval, a slightly elevated temperature, and recovery would fail. This is not resilience. It is tolerance for operating near shutdown. The unsettling detail is that the behavior leading to envenomation does not meaningfully change afterward. There is no reliable avoidance learning, no clear recalibration. The cost is paid late, sometimes after the threat has passed, sometimes while the animal lies motionless, metabolically active, but functionally absent. Evolution usually disfavors strategies that depend on perfect timing. Yet this one persists, suggesting that just enough individuals wake up to reproduce. The honey badger's relationship with venom is not dominance, it is coexistence with delay. Venom works, but not fast enough to guarantee collapse. Recovery works, but not safely enough to guarantee survival. Between those two truths is a narrow corridor where life continues, temporarily disabled, chemically compromised, but not finished. This is biology without padding, no antidote, no control, just altered probabilities. The body does not negate venom, it gambles against it. And the disturbing part is not that the gamble sometimes succeeds, it is that the organism behaves as if that success can be assumed. Skin is supposed to be a boundary, thin enough for sensation, thick enough to delay damage, but never trusted to solve conflict on its own. In the honey badger, that contract is rewritten. The skin is not especially thick, not reinforced with bone or plate, not chemically protected, and yet it functions as a survival interface in encounters where skin should fail immediately. The paradox is mechanical, not heroic. The dermis is unusually loose, detached from underlying muscle by a layer of connective tissue that allows rotation, sliding, and distortion without transferring full force inward. When pressure arrives, the body does not resist it directly. It yields. Teeth, claws, compressive force meet tissue that moves instead of anchoring. This does not prevent injury, punctures occur, tears occur, but the damage is localized and delayed, rarely translated into catastrophic leverage. From a physics perspective, this should still be a losing strategy. Yielding increases exposure time, deformation absorbs energy but does not erase it, and yet, by refusing to present a stable structure, the honey badger denies attackers the mechanical closure they rely on. Grip does not resolve into control. Force does not resolve into immobilization. The unsettling part is that this is not protection in the way armor protects. It is protection through instability. A body that cannot be easily pinned, aligned, or predictably restrained. Even when held, rotation within the skin allows the animal to turn and continue to act. The nervous system remains engaged while the exterior absorbs displacement. This creates a disturbing mismatch between visible compromise and functional capacity. Observers see an animal apparently constrained, yet behavior continues as if the constraint is partial or temporary. There is no illusion of safety here. Infections happen, wounds heal slowly, scar tissue accumulates. This design does not prevent cost, it postpones collapse, and postponement is everything at this scale. A few seconds of continued movement, a partial escape vector, a disrupted grip, these are not dramatic advantages, but they are sufficient. Evolution has not produced a clean solution, only a refusal to lock into failure. The skin becomes a negotiator, constantly reassigning stress away from organs, away from vessels, away from decisive thresholds. The discomfort comes from realizing how close this system operates to tearing itself apart. Loose skin is more vulnerable to laceration, more exposed to pathogens, more demanding to repair. Healing requires energy, time, immune activation. There is no free margin. Each encounter taxes the system further, and still the strategy persists, not because it is safe, but because it keeps the body functional just long enough. The honey badger does not wear protection, it wears delay. And delay in biology is often the only difference between survival and termination. Aggression is expensive, movement costs energy, tissue repair costs energy, immune responses cost energy, and missed meals compound all of it. For a mammal of this size, sustained conflict should trigger rapid metabolic failure. Fat reserves are limited, glycogen stores are shallow, and fasting tolerance is short. The paradox is not that the honey badger expends energy aggressively, but that it continues to do so without a reliable intake buffer. This animal operates on an energy budget that assumes tomorrow will arrive before the bill is due. Metabolic studies place mustelids among the higher mass-specific energy users, with elevated basal metabolic rates relative to body size. Add constant locomotion, digging, fighting, and recovery, and the system approaches overdraft. There is no prolonged hibernation, no extended torpor, no seasonal shutdown to reset the balance. Instead, the strategy is opportunistic feeding, consuming whatever is available, often high-risk prey that itself requires energy to obtain. This creates a feedback loop that should be unstable. High expenditure drives risky foraging increases injury probability, injury increases energetic demand further. In most systems, this spiral ends in collapse. Here, it oscillates. The unsettling aspect is how little slack exists. A few days without food can result in rapid weight loss, compromised immune response, slowed healing. There is no cushion. Survival depends on frequent, unpredictable success. The honey badger does not conserve, it compensates. It burns energy fast and replaces it fast when replacement is possible. When it is not, the system visibly degrades. This is not efficiency, it is throughput. The body is tuned to process and expend, not to store and wait. That makes it vulnerable to any prolonged disruption, drought, injury, competition. Yet across variable environments, populations persist, which means that, statistically, enough individuals find food often enough. The cost of failure is absolute. Starvation does not negotiate. This turns every day into a metabolic trial. The body cannot slow down safely because slowing reduces intake opportunities. It cannot speed up indefinitely because speed increases cost. The balance point is narrow and constantly shifting. What feels wrong is that this is not a strategy built for stability. It is built for momentum. The organism survives by refusing to pause long enough for deficit to crystallize into death. Energy debt is carried forward continuously, never settled, never forgiven. Biology usually enforces limits through exhaustion. Here, exhaustion is managed, delayed, worked around, but never removed. The honey badger lives in a state of perpetual metabolic tension where the next successful meal is not a reward, but a temporary stay of termination. In predator systems, size is information. Mass predicts force, reach predicts control, and most animals learn to disengage when the comparison is unfavorable. This reduces unnecessary injury and preserves energy. The paradox appears when that comparison fails to regulate behavior. Lions, hyenas, and other larger predators have been observed breaking off encounters with a honey badger despite overwhelming physical advantage. This is not because the honey badger could win in a direct contest. It cannot. The unsettling factor is that it removes predictability from the interaction. Threat assessment relies on expected escalation paths. When one animal charges, the other calculates likely outcomes based on past encounters encoded in instinct and learning. The honey badger disrupts that calculation by escalating without proportional cues. There is no gradual display, no hesitation phase that allows recalibration. The cost-benefit model collapses because the smaller animal does not signal submission even when injured. For a larger predator, injury is not binary. A torn lip, a damaged eye, an infected wound can mean starvation later. The honey badger presents itself as a source of high injury risk with low energetic return. That alone is enough to invert the hierarchy. This does not require invincibility, only inconsistency. The unsettling part is that this strategy externalizes risk. The honey badger transfers uncertainty into the decision-making systems of others. It survives not by dominating physics, but by exploiting how other nervous systems evaluate danger. This creates a strange asymmetry. The smaller animal accepts near-certain injury, while the larger one avoids low-probability but high-cost outcomes. From an evolutionary standpoint, this should select against the smaller animal. Frequent injury accumulates cost over time. But because encounters often end early, the total damage stays below lethal thresholds. Again, survival emerges from delay, not denial. The body absorbs enough damage to remain credible as a threat, but not enough to end function. Size stops being the governing variable, replaced by behavioral volatility. That volatility is expensive, risky, and unsustainable at scale. Yet in isolated encounters, it works often enough. The discomfort comes from realizing that natural systems are not optimized for fairness or efficiency, only for avoiding loss. The honey badger turns itself into a loss condition others choose not to accept. It does not win. It persists. Most successful species carry redundancy. Extra capacity in organs, behavioral moderation, reversible mistakes. Evolution usually favors buffers, because buffers absorb error. The honey badger is disturbing because its design minimizes them. Traits stack close to failure thresholds and remain there. High aggression increases injury risk. Loose skin increases infection risk. Venom tolerance increases exposure risk. High metabolism increases starvation risk. These are not balanced by equally extreme repair or recovery systems. There is no evidence of accelerated healing, no extraordinary lifespan, no reduced cellular aging. The paradox is persistence without protection. Over generations, traits like these should self-correct or disappear. Instead, they stabilize, which means that the environment is filtering outcomes more finely than intuition suggests. Individuals die, frequently, but enough survive. Evolution does not require comfort or safety, only reproduction before collapse. The honey badger operates on that minimum. It does not optimize for longevity, it optimizes for continuation. Each trait pushes performance into zones where failure is common but not guaranteed. This creates a lineage that exists in constant proximity to non-existence. There is no graceful aging curve here, no gradual tapering of risk. The same behaviors that allow survival early continue unchanged. That means mortality remains high across life stages, and yet the species remains. The unsettling realization is that biology does not care how close a system runs to collapse, as long as collapse does not occur before genes pass on. There is no moral lesson, no correction, no preference for safety. The honey badger is not an exception to natural law, it is an expression of it, a demonstration that survival does not require margins, only timing. This body, this behavior, this strategy should erase itself. It does not. It persists in a narrow, uncomfortable corridor where error is frequent and forgiveness is rare. What feels wrong is not that such a creature exists, but that nature allows it to continue without adjustment. This is not resilience. It is existence without insurance, a life form that runs hot, runs close, and is never protected from the consequences of its own design. And that is the quiet horror at the center of it, not danger, not violence, but a system that survives while offering itself no safety at all.